This is Show Up as a Leader, a show from People Forward Network, helping you maximize your positive impact on the world by becoming your best, fully authentic self.
Hey everyone, it's Rosie. So this is another fun episode where I am getting the tables turned on me, where my dear friend Nikki Lewallen Gregory is interviewing me for our Courageous Leadership series. Although it's not really so much an interview this time. We're just having a good geek-out powwow session, because this is also the first time we've ever actually been together in person, and which is like crazy. And so we just had an awesome jam session talking about how to really understand how to check in with each other in your team, and really what does it take to have meaningful work? What does it mean to actually leverage the gifts and talents on your team? But also, what kind of deliberate practices do you have to truly serve the work and not just get stuck on that churn wheel of doing the same old in this disruptive environment, and how much more intentional we need to be. I think you're going to get a lot of good stuff. You're going to want to listen. You're going to want to share this. You're probably going to want to take notes, because we have lots of questions that you can ask, and would love to hear what opens up for you and what you're putting into practice.
Hey, it's Nikki Lewallen Gregory, and today for our Courageous Leadership episode together, Rosie and I, we're doing it a little bit different. We're actually meeting for the first time live. Like, we've seen each other on a screen for years. And so Rosie even said, hey, why don't we do this just a little different? Let's make it a collaborative conversation on something that we can go deep on, rather than, like, I use it as, I hate to say this, but I get like free coaching every time we do our Courageous Leadership together. So we're here today live. Rosie, this is so awesome to be in person. And we're going to dig in on what I call on my team, finding the right seat of the bus, or maximizing our strengths. I'm so excited about it. So good to be with you.
I know, we're in person. Like, yay. Let's just yay for CultureCon. Like, you got to take advantage of this opportunity.
And by the way, what brought us together, CultureCon. So we're around a bunch of leaders that all prioritize people first, building better cultures. So the energy in here is awesome. Just glad that we're able to share the studio and be able to create this special episode. So, Rosie, when it comes to, really helping people to evolve into the right seats, or even hiring people into the best seats to start their roles inside of a company, I'm curious, like, your thoughts on laying the groundwork for that.
Yeah, there's a lot. I've been having a lot of these conversations lately with our clients. And actually, I have a podcast interview coming out, future guest, that is going to be talking about this. I think that so often we look at job descriptions of a whole bunch of tasks that people have to do, but we're not really thinking about, what does their day look like? What does the week look like? What does the work need? What is the future of the organization need? Where are we going? And what's kind of the right, combination of traits and skill sets that is going to feed that moving forward. And I think in the absence of that, then someone leaves the organization, or they get a better job, or they have a spouse that moves, or whatever, all the different reasons that people leave. And then we're just going to backfill that position. But we don't stop and think, okay, what do we actually need in that role? Does this role now need to look different because we're at a different stage of the company? We're at a different stage of our strategy. We're at a different stage of this. And also, what type of skill set is going to complement this team or fill in gaps that we have? And I think without having that intentionality, you have people together and you have a bunch of work that has to get done. And then suddenly you realize, oh my goodness, we don't have anybody on this team that has the right combination of skill sets or motivations to do X, Y, Z. No wonder why we're struggling. And so I just think this is such an important conversation, because this is the work that we've been doing a ton of lately. And as you know, with these conversations, it's usually, if it's coming up a lot, it's probably a time for us to do one of our Courageous Leadership series conversations on it, because it's probably happening for other people, or they're on a team where they're like, yeah, that's probably why it's really harder than it needs to be right now.
Yeah, totally. And I could give examples of people on my team that have done complete, quote unquote, departmental shifts. We're a small team, so, department of one or two maybe, but still they're going to a completely different side of the business, because we have really gone deeper to understand where they thrive, where they get energy, and that sustainable energy. One being Chelsea Sanger. I mean, she came in supporting sales and marketing. If you look at any assessment tool, by the way, we're going to get to assessment tools that we love. If you look at any assessment tool, you'd be like, why in the heck was she doing sales and marketing? Well, when we got started, she came with I want to do anything I can to work at this company. The company I'm working at currently is toxic and I needed to get away from it. And the only thing that I had at that time to be able to pay her for would be sales and marketing. So there was a why there, right? And it was like, as soon as we can get you out of that, I promise you we will. She did a great job, but we have evolved her into, she's our head of operations now. Because we went so deep to understand, like, this girl can build processes that are sustainable. Her heart is in helping people have technology that makes their life flow. And dang, she is doing that for all of our team members. So we lean into 2 tools, one of which you introduced me to. So I know you use this. We lean into strengths. So really operating from what it is, your God-given talents and where you thrive. But then you introduced me to the YOS, which is understanding your why. If you're familiar with like Simon Sinek's work, like start with why, and then your how you see the world, how, like for mine is a better way. I'm always looking for a better way. It's not like how we did it 2 weeks ago. Maybe it's like, what did we find to look into the better way? And then my what is to challenge. I'm always looking at like, but why are we doing it this way? And it's really shaped a number of us on the team. So those are our 2 tools that we use, and a lot of what we use with Chelsea to get her to her strength zone or right seat on the bus. Curious for you. You introduced me to the YOS, so I know you use that, but you use other tools.
Yeah, well, and it's kind of similar for us too, is that, you know, I think that sometimes when you maybe have a new team, a new department, you know, startup company, right? So this could be for any group, but for both of us, you know, entrepreneurs, we own our own businesses. When you have smaller teams, it is kind of a bit of all hands on deck, and people just, what do we all need to do? But then you start to realize where things might be falling through the cracks, or people procrastinate on things, or, you know, like I will procrastinate on things because it's stuff I hate to frickin' do, but there's no one else to do it, type of a thing. And so with that being said, we definitely use the YOS on our team, and we've actually created a whole team profile, and we have the simple language. So my why is challenge. So it's, you know, I'm all about challenging the status quo, and my how is also a better way, and my what is contribute. So, but we also talk about regulating it, because you know, someone on my team's why is better way, and it gives us a language to say, you're going down a rabbit hole of, you know, better weighing it to death, and we've got to like kind of find the minimum viable, you know, standard for this or whatever. But then the other one we use is the 6 types of working genius. So we pair those together, because with the 6 type of working genius, it is 2 of them are your geniuses. Those are where you are going to find fulfillment and thrive and energy. They're like your happy place, but also kind of similar to Strengths Finder. When you have those, they also tend to be your default go-to, which misused, misapplied, just like strengths, misused and misapplied can become a liability. So with any of these things, it's understanding how do you regulate it, because just because it's a strength, just because it's your go-to, just because it's an area where you find fulfillment doesn't mean it's needed right now, or it's the best place for it right now. So you have to know when to leverage it and when to hold it back. Yeah. So with the working genius, you got 2 that are your geniuses, 2 that are your working competencies, where it's, you can do them, you can be effective, but you got to have some boundaries, because if you spend too much time there, it is going to pretty much drain you and suck you under. Mm-hmm. And then 2 of them are your working frustrations. And again, working frustration doesn't mean you can't do them. They are frustrators. So you probably will avoid them. You probably are going to get really crabby really quickly if you have to spend much time there. So, you know, so what we've been doing is we put we pair the YOS with the working genius, and we do a ton of work with teams to help them understand, you know, what type of work should we be doing? Who should we be leveraging? Put aside the job descriptions for a second, and let's look at who you have. And I did this recently with a team, and they realized that their admin, who needs to be highly detail oriented and stuff, working frustration is tenacity. And they're like, no wonder why it makes sense. Like, and they're having to follow up, and this person isn't doing what they want. Well, then it opened up a conversation with the leaders. Okay, so you have a couple choices. Is there another role on this team or within the organization, if you see this person as an asset and their gifts could be better used somewhere else, rather than going down a performance management and a PIP and all that stuff, is there another place where they have a better opportunity to be successful and to be fulfilled and also add value to the organization? And if not, then you need to really start to be real of, but this is what the work requires. This person is a square peg in a round hole. And how much do you want to try to make that fit because you're miserable? I will say on our team, going back to all hands on deck, Lisa on my team is amazing and can do absolutely everything. But, I was starting to see where she was getting really drained with some of the more tenacity or some of the more operations, some of the whatever. And so I was like, we need to bring in somebody who can do operations, who has a why of right way. They are skilled at bringing in structure and systems and all of those things. I'm like, I need that brain, right? And I need someone who's got some genius around tenacity and enablement, who's willing to dig in and help, who is going to work through frustrations. And so it also helps who do we need? And then how do we manage our frustrations with each other when, we work very differently, but it's what's the work at hand and how can we leverage the best out of people? And I think when we've started doing that, it has been a game changer. When we've done this with other clients, it's been a game changer. And then we're also starting to use this in a more detailed process we do with succession planning and leadership bench strength assessments with clients when they're trying to figure out what do we need. And they have people that are great salespeople and they put them in a leadership role and they want to elevate them to a senior level leader, and you start looking at their profile and I'm like, really? I don't think you do. And so I think starting to use some of this stuff can help you go, what is the career path for people that is going to still allow growth, but not going to try to twist them into something that they're just not and probably never will be. Mm-hmm. And that's not fair to anybody.
Right. Yeah. No one can thrive in that.
No.
I was just thinking about another real life example of using these assessment tools to solve a challenge or a pain inside of our organization, and a shift with someone that I've worked with, Ashley Young, prior to People Forward Network and other companies. So we had already known each other in the way of work. So we did her YOS and it was right way. Her number one strength out of 34 of them is discipline. So I am like, there is nothing getting by her. So for an example, here at CultureCon, we had, maybe 57 moving parts, probably more than that. There was one thing that the day before we had hey, did you guys get the deck ready for this? And I'm thinking, how did we miss this? If it's due today, there's no way. So, my shortcut is like, hey, Ashley, so tell me about this deck. It's not even in her notes. So I was like, there's my gut check to know. We never had that information. Nothing gets by her. And so what we have done now is we've found the need in our company with all of these technology changes that we needed a head of project management. So project management, so many steps, like checks and balances, dotting I's, crossing T's. And so she is evolving into this role so much because of what we did with the strengths work, us working together, and then the YOS. So that in the assessment world of these things that help us to get to know people, also mixed with understanding their needs, their dreams, their purpose.
Oh,
I think
100%.
We can't overlook, these tools can help us find strengths areas and skill sets and, those kind of tactical things, if you will. But matching it with the purpose of the person. Everyone goes through seasons of life in different stages. It's like when you have little kids, your needs for work are so different. So no matter what, you can't be a disciplined project manager that turns on at 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and never leaves their desk at that stage in life. So where does that come in for you in helping people find their strength zone on a team, that purpose or needs factor?
Yeah.
Where does that come in?
So one of my favorite exercises that I have done on my teams that I've led, I actually just handed this as an assignment to one of my coaching clients who took over a team, is really frustrated and trying to figure out who does what, and I would say revisit this, maybe it's once a year, maybe it's twice a year if you're in a high growth mode, maybe you want to revisit it quarterly as a pulse check. But I basically say, okay, everyone needs to bucket out their work in 4 different areas. So you could just put it out on an Excel spreadsheet or a Word document, and here's your 4 columns. The first is, what are the things that you currently have on your plate or are responsible for that light you up, that fulfill you, that you're in your happy place, that you want to keep doing or do more of? And you're probably going to see, if you have used one of these tools, it's going to start to sync up. But you take that stuff out of it, just let's just get really tactical. List out all the things that you love doing, want to keep doing, do more of, you're in flow when you get to do those. List out the things that you're neutral about. You have to take care of them. You could go one way or the other. If they were taken off your plate, you wouldn't care. If you still had to do them, you wouldn't care. You're really, truly neutral about them. Then it's the bucket of, these are the things that if there was someone else that you could pass it off to, that you could delegate it to, that you really did not have to be responsible for, you would happily let it go. I have no qualms. Bye, peace out, like, whoo, right? And then the last column is, what are the things that you would love to get to, that you would love to either grow into, learn, or you see as possibilities, right? Maybe it's a possible new project or a possible new thing. If you have the bandwidth, if you had the time to learn it, that, like, again, it's kind of the growth. And what is super fascinating is when I started doing this a few years ago, and on one of my teams, this is before Salveo Partners, became really clear about, okay, what is the next role we need for our team? Because we hear all the time, we're do more with less and we're overworked and whatever. And it's like, but what is that next role? When you start to bucket it out and go, it started to become really clear what type of role we needed in that regard. And we've done that on our team. And it's like, oh, it starts to get really clear. Like, this is the next role we need. And if we can't pass it off right now, then how do we care for that or mitigate it? Because if someone is spending most of their time in a bucket of stuff that drains them, that's not going to be good for anybody. And so what do we need to do to care for that? And so that's an exercise that you can do. And even if you have those assessments, I think it's also a good check of, okay, fine. So I know my strengths or I know my working geniuses, but it's to, have we allocated the work appropriately to allow everyone to be their best as much as possible? We all have stuff that we don't care for, but I would rather have someone who has a lot in their bucket they love, stuff in their neutral, and stuff they're growing towards, and minimal in that bucket of like, God, please no. Like, if someone could take it, I'm happy.
Yeah. That is such a great exercise. And I don't know if it's okay to volunteer your time if people, need to learn more about that, but it is such a game changer. I'm happy to reach out to me as well. We call it good, bad, love, hate. There's different versions of that, but it's basically looking at, like, for the things that suck your soul, get them out of your life. And it is true that you could have a strength in something. There are things in my strength zone that I just no longer enjoy doing.
Yeah.
That can be.
Yeah.
So that's where I think you have to have a mix of some of the stuff with, like, the seasons of life and just where you're at with, who you be now, right? It's important to marry those and, look at dreams, purpose, what motivates you, also with, like, these skills that you've been gifted with. I don't know if I've ever told you about this purpose gap matrix. When we bring anyone onto our team, actually during the interview process, and then we check in on it as well, there are these 5 questions. I don't know if this is ringing a bell, but I'll run through them real quick and see how this resonates. But there's 5 questions. Number 1 is, and you look at it on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being 5 being yep, all the way. My work uses my abilities. That's number 1. So just think about that for a second. If you're in a role, you feel like you're doing okay, but, like, you're not using all that you have, right? There's a huge gap there for sustainability and really getting the most out of someone and them feeling that way. Number 2 is the way that I get to work, right? Mm-hmm. The way some people are like, I could never work from home, right? And I'm like, well, this is really good to talk about this before you even come in here, because they're like, I would be totally distracted. Maybe I hear people say, like, I'm not just joking about I actually have this as well myself, but like an ADD situation, like you have to have an environment set up for yourself. And sometimes people will say, because of that, I have to be in a structured environment. I have that too, but I do work from home. I've figured out how to make it work. And the way that I get to work works for me because I've built that environment even in my house, but on a scale of 1 to 5. Number 3, my rewards for my work are great. So even if we're in our strength zone, like Ashley, she's getting to right way, discipline, checks and balances, project manager overseeing this, but the rewards, because, like, Maslow's hierarchy, right? If we don't have those things at play, we can't put all of ourselves into the work. Yeah. You probably find in 5 side hustles or whatever that is. I feel capable in the work that I am doing. So sometimes you might have a strength, but you get thrown into a role and you're, like, every day doubting yourself, right? That takes away from it. And then number 5, my work is advancing my career. So if any form of, like, someone that wants more, which is most everybody, you want, like, a future, if you don't see that for yourself, even if you're playing in your strength zone, like, all of it's not going to work to be truly, like, maximized, right?
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love that you're putting intentionality to it. And I think So this is hey, listeners, go share this with your leader or share this with your colleagues or go share this with your team and go do these exercises or have these conversations, because I'm telling you, and this is not a one and done, like to your point. So I think it's going to be different for everyone, but it might be, do you revisit these on a quarterly basis? Do you revisit them twice a year, at a minimum once a year, because stuff does change? And it's, let's have a pulse check and not waiting till an annual performance review. Like, no, it's like, this is a pulse check of where are you at? Where's your energy? Where's your fulfillment? Because culture is fluid, it's not stagnant, and people are fluid, they're not stagnant. And so I think if we're not, it's great to use these various assessment tools as a foundation and to understand one another and to know what you need on the team. But then that by itself doesn't do anything if you don't have practices of how do you keep it alive and look at it and pay attention to it when you're having team meetings and when you're having discussions until it becomes a second language. But then even on top of that, it's that just because of that, I still got to check in. How are you doing? Is this too much? Is this too much too soon? Someone has something going on in their personal life and it's like, no, right now, even though I know that this would be their wheelhouse, I need you to keep doing this for right now because this person cannot absorb one more thing right now. And I'm having those conversations and they're like, nope, I totally get it. So we're not robots. And so I think if we're not having those discussions, if like you are listening to this and you're not a formal people leader, these are conversations that you should be initiating with your leader if they're not the ones doing it. If you're listening to this and you're a leader, start having these conversations at a team. It's a great pulse check rather than waiting for an annual engagement survey or something that is a lagging indicator. Let's not only help have the right people in the right type of roles to serve the work and to serve the people on our team, but let's also check in with it because it's going to change.
Yeah. And I know you guys at Salveo Partners and the work that you do, Dr. Rosie Ward work, like you are loaded with tools to help enable this, and you really build custom programs to bring the right tool solutions like Working Genius to the table. You'll match that based on what you know about the client that you're working with. But also it's like the playbooks that you bring to develop the leaders to be courageous leaders through this. I think it's worth touching on for a second, scenarios of where in the midst of developing your team and helping people get to the right seat of the bus, let's just face it, like people don't love change. Most humans, right? Like there are very few that they're like, I wake up every day just to so that everything's shuffled up and changed. It's just not, and so as a courageous leader, walking alongside them to help them evolve into maybe what they feel is like a scary next step to maximize them to help the organization. It's like, how do you walk alongside to do that and develop those people? How do you, help someone see that the role that they're in right now is really not their best use of self? And how to have that type of conversation with them, right? I think as a leader, we're there to see things in others and provide that inspiration or, in a delicate way, help them to see there's somebody else on the team that could do this better. Let's get you over here. Curious your thoughts on just the tough conversations, the courageous conversations that come with getting people to the right seats of the bus and the way you do this work.
Well, I think it goes without saying, because here's the thing is that you're right. As human beings, we are hardwired to kind of resist change. We truly are. It's in our DNA. And so we always say that the work that we do fundamentally to rehumanize workplaces is first and foremost helping leaders and teams navigate the messiness of change and disruption, because there's so much human junk. There's head trash, there's emotions, there's stuff that, and then we make up stories. This person's intentionally being difficult. No, they're not. They're being a human. So how do we lean into that and how do we reconcile that? And so I share all that because I do think there is the, part of having the courageous conversations is you've got to do a lot of inner work and know yourself and know, okay, hey, I'm triggered right now, or you've got to know what your gifts and talents are. I mean, you've got to leverage some of these various tools to know yourself really well and to be able to have a core and common language on your team, in your organization that really helps just cut through the fog and name it. We've talked on a previous session, I'm below the line right now, or I'm really stuck right now, or I'm really triggered right now, or whatever it might be, and naming it. So if we don't also name our reality, and so then I think, if I'm a leader, a formal leader, and I'm having a conversation with you on my team, it's I have to be real and say, look, like, I value you and I know you do good work here. I also know you're frustrated because we've hopefully been having these conversations. And so I know where you're at and I know what makes you tick and I'm not making up a story. And then it's like, so, here's the thing, we need to figure out how to reconcile this and let's just have an open conversation and let's just do this. And I will tell you, I was facilitating a session with an executive team just the other day and, stuff came out that needed to come out and someone apologized and they're like, no, this is like, we have to be able, if we cannot speak these things, if we can't talk about the reality, it's an elephant in the room and it leads to resentment. And so I think that there are so many different skills and tools that help us all show up more courageously. And that's the work that we do all the time, because you cannot lead change. You cannot grow an organization in an effective, scalable way. You can't live in this environment without caring for the human elements, right? We keep hearing about AI and all this stuff, and it's here, it's not going anywhere, but you're still fundamentally dealing with human beings, and that's never going to go away. And so we've got to really be intentional to upskill of how do we navigate the human elements. And I think that that's going to be the key to, I think, success in the future. And a lot of these tools and a lot of digging in and getting uncomfortable is what it's going to take, honestly.
Since it's the Courageous Leadership series, I'm just going to make a bold statement. For those that are listening right now and you've never done the work to truly understand your people, and whether it's a version of the purpose gap matrix to understand what matters to them at this season in their life, if you haven't done assessments to understand the gifts and strengths that they bring to the table, you haven't asked the questions to understand the good, bad, love, hate, or what they enjoy doing versus what soul sucks them. If you don't even know that, like, get started. I don't know what form of a assessment blueprint type of a session that Rosie and the team at Salveo can do, but I know that there's a place to start to, like, just get a roadmap, right? And then for some of you out there, and I know I've been at this stage in business before where I forget how long it's been since I've really checked in to look at where can we reallocate resources to a better place, people resources to a better place, and maximize. Like when Chelsea came in, we didn't have any opportunity to really lean into her biggest gifts. She was in a completely different space of the business, but it matched at that time. We were solving a short-term need for a pain for her, and we had the opportunity. Well, what if I would have just let that go? And she just always stayed in that realm. And she's like, spending time in her work hours, like checking the box on researching marketing topics, right? We want people to be in a place where it's like, not that we want people working weekends, just go with me on the example. Like, I love this stuff. Like, I want to go and I want to research it because I love it. And that's where, we all deserve to be, right? And that 100%. Is meaningful work, where it's like, it's not just clock in, clock out. It is an extension of our lives and what we really care about. So if any of that is speaking to you, I say call Rosie up and figure out ways that you all can work together. Any closing comments?
No, I just think I love all that. And I think, go back to, we're not stagnant, and we have to leverage all the different tools, the different conversations, and have a deliberate practice of checking in. And I cannot tell you, if you are listening and you are a formal people leader, please, 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 please be having regular, meaningful one-on-ones with your team members. I cannot tell you how many organizations we work with, and we start working with their leaders, their frontline supervisors, their managers, even their more senior level, and you start to find out they don't really have meaningful one-on-ones, or their one-on-ones are just kind of a gab fest, or it's a check the box, check in on deliverables, but they're not checking in and having the human, how are you doing? They're not checking in and having the developmental conversations and checking in on the work itself. And this is like so simple, and it's like management 101, but you would be surprised at how infrequently it is done.
Well, there's been a theme at CultureCon through many of the episodes that we've done today, and it's like, don't overlook the simple stuff. The 5 minutes to have the conversation rather than waiting for the white space on the calendar 2 weeks later. The simple audio message that says, hey, I just thought of you and I'm checking in from, a couple days ago with that tough conversation. Just those things that are really simple efforts that I think get overlooked, but they're just monumental in the difference that it makes in, building relationships and longevity.
100%.
So
mic drop.
Yeah.
I'm Rosie Ward, and this is Show Up as a Leader. To learn more, head over to peopleforwardnetwork.com and, of course, hit that follow button.